What makes you, you? No, seriously. If I put you in a room with 1,000 other people per se, in what way would you differentiate yourself? Would it just be by physical appearance? Or is it perhaps more to do with what our eyes can't see? What is inside us? Or rather, what is with our minds? Mental health, as a field specialized towards men, is something we've seen more traction throughout the decades. Something that used to just be chalked to needing to man up or being told to bottle up your emotions is something that we no longer do today. We see researchers today scrutinize how we treat men's mental health, and there's been more of an emphasis put onto the social factors of how the environment around us affects men's mental health. But the thing about mental health is that it's not a one-size-fits-all issue. Our minds are layers and layers of complexity as to how we interpret the social, the physical, and spiritual landscape around us. And in evaluating mental health, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of factors that come into play when evaluating individually. With one such factor I want to delve into today is hair. Hair is an important social stigma that should be addressed in discussions surrounding men's mental health. Now, for many of us here in this room, hair is an important factor of who we are as individuals, of our cultures, our societies, and our beliefs. But we don't often think about how our hair plays as total in our characters, or rather what happens when we lose that aspect of ourselves. And so in this speech, I want to go through the commonality of hair loss and how that problem is multiplied by the prevalence of social media. I want to delve into how these two issues imply or implicate the issues of social isolation and self-scrutinization among male populations. And finally, I want to go through how we can possibly try and address these problems, not just on a societal level, but on a personal level as well. So let's grab our combs, brush out our dandruff, and get straight into the meat of this. You might be wondering to yourself, Mr. Benedict, why hair? Well, for one, I have hair, you have hair, most of the people in the world have hair. But you want to know what else the world has? A thing called pattern baldness. Now, pattern baldness is this phenomenon in which men and women will often start to lose their hair due to factors such as genetics, age, and mutations. Now, this isn't a sexist thing. This happens to both men and women, but in terms of men, we often lose the genetic lottery. Hair loss happens to men at much younger ages, in their 20s and 30s. Hair loss is much more visual in men, such as their crown and the head. And overall, hair is just an uncontrollable factor of ours due to genetics and our stuff such as testosterone. Look at a picture of your grandparents, of your grandpa and grandma. Tell me which one has more hair in that photo. And then a research article published by Thomas Rhodes in 2018 found that around 33% of all men aged 18 to 59 in the United States population will at some point experience pattern baldness. Now think about that statistic just for a moment. That's roughly a third of all men in the United States who will start to experience some form of pattern baldness in their lifetimes. This isn't a question of if it's going to happen, but rather a question of when it's going to happen. And so for many men, it sort of paints this hair as being sort of an Achilles heel for most of us, where no matter what we do, no matter how we try and treat it, it's something that's ultimately predetermined. It's more predetermined than the Calvinist Catholic Christian. And so this issue of the commonality of hair loss then plays into a much bigger role, which is the prevalence of social media today. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Social media is essentially the climate and the culture of today. A research article published by the University of Maine in 2023 found that there are 4.8 billion social media users across the world. That's 60% of the world population, 90% of all internet users. And social media definitely has its whole arguments you can make about it, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. But one of the main negatives of social media is how it warps our perception of the world. It warps our perception of reality because algorithms that are used on social media affect and influence how we think. So let's put this together. We have a third of all men in the United States who will start to experience some form of pattern baldness, combined with an algorithmic social media climate that advocates for perfectionism and purism in social media and online culture. And you basically have a combo that goes together as well as texting and driving, as in it doesn't. And so with these problems, these cause in male populations the problems of self-isolation and self-scrutinization. Now, we live in a society, a sophisticated scholar once said that. And in society, we often try to live by the societal norms, the societal expectations that surround us. But with social media, it warps our perception of what is the norm around us. And bit by bit, it changes our behavior, our behavioral changes in how we contribute to the world around us, especially with men and their hair. Think about climates. Think about your work culture with your coworkers, or think about being in a relationship with your spouse. Bit by bit, this sort of self-reflection over your personality and your looks influences and causes you to become more self-isolated, because your perception of what normalcy really is, especially in regards to your looks and hair, is warped. And slowly you become more and more self-isolated from the world. And this leads into the issue of self-scrutinization. Now for men, we often used to be the dominant in the family hierarchy. Men were the warriors, men were often the breadwinners, and men still dominate several different fields of studies today. And for men, there's a lot of societal expectations across the world that we stay committed, or that we remain at the top of the world structure. And hair is one of the many factors that can go into bringing us down in our perceptions of ourselves. Bringing us down in our looks, especially for something that we can't control about ourselves. And so men will beat themselves down about it, about how we can't control our looks, how we can't upkeep with the societal expectations that have been warped by societal norms. And so now that we've gone through how the problem of commonality of hair loss and social media impact self-isolation and self-scrutinization, we can now go into perhaps how we can try and address these problems. Now, on a societal level, there has to be a lot of changes in our society today. Obviously, with social media, which is sort of an impossibility to do due to its prevalence. But one of the main things we can do is flip the usage of social media on its head. The same things that make social media addictive and harmful to our health can also be flipped to try and improve our stuff. The internet has almost an unlimited amount of resources for people to use, to find resources. And the internet can connect you to social groups that can help you through your struggles about your identity and how you treat yourself with your mental health. Now, on a personal level, I know many of you will be asking yourself, how can you help with men and their pattern baldness, especially if you're a woman or if you don't suffer from that? But it can help with breaking the social stigma in your families, in your friend groups. If you have a father figure who is suffering from it, you can ask them about that. If you have a friend who is often closed about their issue as a whole, you can discuss that issue with them and hopefully open up with them bit by bit. Men are pretty self-isolated about their emotions and personalities, but if you can show that you are trusting and that you can help with their issues, then they will open up and help break that stigma. And so, just to conclude, we've gone over the commonality of hair loss, how that problem interjects with social media. We've gone through how these problems create issues of self-isolation and self-scrutinization among male populations. And finally, we've gone through how to address this on a societal and personal level. So think about that hypothetical I asked you earlier. What makes you you? Ask yourself, are you defined by what's at the top of your head or what's beneath it?